Hi, I'm Elle, and I am here to talk about miracles and the medical field. So I really enjoyed researching this topic, and I hope you enjoy. All right, so hopefully you can see my screen now. Um, let's begin. So to start, we have to talk about what a miracle is. And it seems that this term can be used for a lot of different things. So a common one is like Christ's healing was miraculous, or Moses parting the Red Sea. But then there's other things like having your first child or falling in love. You can see I put all these things in a word graphic here that all have been termed as a miracle. And so I think it's important that we set some definitions aside before we start jumping into miracles within the medical realm. Okay, so this is a philosopher. And I think when we're talking about the philosophical premise behind this term, he's a prominent one that people turn to. And his definition will come useful later on in this discussion. So he defined a miracle as a violation of the laws of nature. And he said, nothing is esteemed a miracle if it ever happened in the common course of nature. And so basically, falling in love or having your first child, as I stated on the previous slide, would not be a miracle by his definition because it has to be breaking the laws of nature, which is a way that lots of people do view this term because it would not be miraculous if it happened on its own. But in the 21st century, you can see that we use this term a lot more broadly. And so I just pulled up the Cambridge Dictionary definition in order to give a concise way that we view this term now. And so I'll read it. An unusual and mysterious event that is thought to have been caused by a god because it does not follow the usual laws of nature. So that one is more similar to Hume's, which we still hold now. But it also gives a second definition, which is just a very lucky event that is surprising and unexpected. And so I think that's important to notice too, that it can be an event that is still following the laws of nature, but it's still like something special about it. And so, yes, that's the 21st century definition. And so this one is the medical definition, kind of. So they don't usually write in medical journals, it was a miracle, this person was healed. That's not really a scientific approach to things. And so they call these sort of instances that the patient would probably call a miracle, a spontaneous healing. And these spontaneous healings are just like they healed, not expectedly. The doctors didn't really contribute to it. It just happened. And while they seem like spontaneous healings wouldn't happen that often in the medical community, here it says the occurrence is 1 out of every 100,000, which sounds little, but when you think about all the people in the world, it's actually a significant number of people that have experienced this. And so that's the kind of medical definition of miracles, but more how people in medicine term these kind of events. And so now we come to our church and see what they have to say about this topic. So I went to the church's website, their miracle page on gospel topics, and it said, it just defined it as an extraordinary event caused by the power of God. And so theirs is kind of different than all the ones we heard in the past, where it was just like, extraordinary event could be against the laws of nature, or it could be within the laws. It's just God's hand in someone's life. And the Bible dictionary says, miracles should not be regarded as deviations from the ordinary course of nature so much as manifestations of divine or spiritual power. So here it goes as far to say, no, they're following the laws of nature, but that they are, I guess, spiritual. They came from spiritual power. And so I think that's interesting to note that they're going completely against Hume by saying, no, they can fit within the laws of nature, but that it's a miracle because it's from God. And so that's our definition. So how does our definition in our church fit with what's happening in the medical community and how they try to explain these events from a scientific perspective, I guess? And there wasn't much done by the medical community really studying these spontaneous healings or really trying to explain them and just fit them into scientific theories of the day. And just there wasn't very much, but I did find a couple doctors that have studied this. during their life. And so Dr. Jeffrey Rediger was one of them. And I guess I feel like this quote is good, so I'm just going to read it to say his explanation of this topic. So he says, miracles only contradict what we know of nature at this point in time. Modern physics is, for example, way ahead of traditional science, and its implications have not been fully incorporated into its perspectives and methods yet. So I believe that miracles actually are consistent with the mental and spiritual laws that we are only beginning to study. This is the only way I can understand the similarities among all those with remarkable recoveries whom I've been interviewing. So I think it's really interesting that he is saying that these events aren't like Hume says, where they go against these laws, but that they follow these laws that we just don't understand yet. Which when I read this, I was like, that's basically exactly what our church defines it as, where it's following laws that God has set aside, but they're just laws that we don't understand. And so we call it miraculous, when maybe they're just following these laws that God is using to heal someone, which is not, from our conventional scientific point of view, understandable. And so I really liked what he had to say on the topic. And so here's the next doctor. And she went as far as to like pinpoint what commonalities were between these people who had these healings. Kind of like what was the laws that they were following in order to get their medical miracle. And so I just put them all up here. You can read her book if you want. And it is relevant because I found a lot of correlations with her different pinpoints of what people do in order to get a miracle and different things we do to show faith in our church. And so you can be trying to connect the dots in your head, which I'll go on later on, but let me just pinpoint the different commonalities that she found. And so one of them is releasing suppressed emotions, increasing positive emotions, embracing social support, deepening spiritual connections, having strong reasons for living, changing diet, taking control of health, following intuition, and using herbs and supplements. And so, here, let me check what's on the next slide. Okay. And so with these different reasons, you can start connecting the dots like, oh, I see how that's part of our church. Oh, I see how that's part of church, which I'll come back to later. But first, let's talk about laws. And so in our church, we believe in laws. And I think that's relevant, especially with what the previous doctor had said about, oh, it's just following laws that we don't understand yet. And so here, I'm just going to read this quote from D&C. And again, verily I say unto you, he, referring to God, hath given a law unto all things, by which they move in their time and their seasons, and their courses are fixed, even the courses of the heavens and the earth, which comprehend the earth and all the planets. I think that's a really beautiful scripture, and it eloquently puts that God has given a law and a structure and organization to all things. And so it only makes sense that there is a structure and organization to miracles, which I really love, and I feel like that kind of goes against Hume's perspective, but is able to say, no, we can take a scientific approach. It's just a sort of science that we don't understand yet. And so I think, as I put in the second bullet point, this important takeaway here is that miracles can have an explanation. They can have a design behind them, and they're still considered this amazing event because they're gifted from God, and it's still something very special. And so, yeah, I think it's really wonderful. And so now we need to discuss, well, what is the system, the organized set design that God has put in place for miracles, especially in the medical field, so healings, miraculous healings. And this is when we go back to Dr. Kelly A. Turner. And here we go. So I just put in a couple of hers and kind of threw scriptures in that correlate to her different methods. And so I'll start with the ether quote, and it says, for if there be no faith among the children of men, God can do no miracle among them. Wherefore, he showed not himself until after their faith. And so here it seems that before God will give someone this miracle, that they need to have faith and show their faith. And so I think you can kind of find that within these 9 methods, because it's deepening spiritual connections, which is deepening their connection to God, their faith, and their trust in him. And following intuition was a big one, where I feel like in our church, the way I follow my intuition is from listening to my spiritual promptings, which is then showing faith. And definitely positive emotions. All these things kind of show how maybe a scientist would term different outcomes that happens to a person when they have faith. And I think not all these people that she interviewed who had miracles maybe believed in the same God as us, or maybe didn't even believe in God, but at some level, them turning to the spiritual, them turning to their intuition, maybe God could have used that as enough with their knowledge of that's the way that they can show faith with their knowledge. And so I think that's really beautiful. And then I'll read this church handbook quote. So it says, faith is much more than passive belief. We express our faith through action by the way we live. And I think this correlates with her other ones where it's literally acting on the faith. And so people who, even though these were the people that Dr. Turner interviewed were like terminally ill, they still had trusted their faith and took actions to get better and didn't just give up. And so they changed their diet. They're taking control of their health. They're releasing their suppressed emotions. They're using herbs and supplements. They're embracing everyone around them. And I think that that's a way that not only they're having faith, you can see they're deepening their spiritual connections, but that they're using this, what they feel inside, to then take these actions and show, look, I'm acting on my faith. While scientific evidence doesn't show taking herbs and supplements is going to save someone from a life-threatening disease, that's a little hard to say, but it's putting all these things together and saying, look, this person was really trying to trust their intuition, trust their faith, trust however they understand it, and they were taking action. And I think that definitely fits within the laws of faith, I guess, in our church. And so I just love that the deeper I dug into this topic, it was like very apparent that these miracles followed similar patterns that we follow when we pray and ask God for things. And so anyways, I love this topic. Thanks for listening to me. I've really enjoyed getting to talk to people about this topic, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity that I had to present in this symposium, and I hope that you enjoyed my message. So thank you so much.